On the 25th of November 2023, the Department of Home Affairs introduced massive sweeping reforms on 482 visas, making it relatively easy to transition to a 186 visa. So what is a 482 visa? How do you get one? Well, find out after this. Welcome back, guys. Thanks for listening. We have a special guest here today, Christina Amato from iMigration, one of the senior registered migration agents who specializes in the employer-sponsored visa, specifically 482s and 186 visas. Welcome, Christina.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Welcome back to the show. So let's have a bit of a chat about 482 visas.
Yeah.
So tell me, what is a 482 visa?
So a 482 visa is a temporary business-sponsored visa, in short.
Okay, that is clear, succinct, to the point. Now, a 482 visa has multiple stages to it, a standard business sponsorship and nomination of visa application. But today, I think it's important that we just focus on the visa application because that is the part that concerns the visa applicant. Okay, so tell us about the visa application stage. First of all, there's three pathways, three streams, but we're mainly looking at two. So let's have a bit of a chat about that. Those two main streams.
So in short, there's two main streams that we usually deal with. So there's short-term stream and the medium-term stream. So depending on your occupation is where you'll fit within each stream.
Okay, so the stream you pick is dependent on your occupation.
Yes, correct.
So why is that?
So there's two different occupation lists. One's for the short-term stream, one's for the medium-term stream. So then depending on your occupation is basically what requirements you need to meet. Okay,
so the MLT SSL is for the medium-term stream, short-term skilled occupation list, and certain occupations on the ROL are for the shorter-term stream.
Yeah.
Thanks for helping me out there, Christina. Anyway, so tell us, what are the requirements? How does one be eligible for one of these visas? If they've already got an employer, because it happens a lot. You hear people say, oh, my boss says I can sponsor you. Having said that, let's say the nomination's all successful. How is one eligible for a 482 visa?
So there's a few different things to look at. I guess the most important thing is that you have 2 years of work experience.
Okay.
It's important to note that it doesn't have to be post-qualification work experience, which makes it very flexible.
Oh, whoa. Let's hold it right there, because a lot of the time people say or people think that your 2 years of work experience needs to be after you got your relevant qualification. So are you saying technically someone could come here and study, and whilst they're studying, they're working on the side, and that can count towards the 2 years of employment experience?
Yeah, absolutely. So the legislation is very flexible in the way that it's worded. So it does allow for pre-qualification work. It also allows for part-time work to be counted.
Part-time work? So it doesn't need to be full-time?
Yes, it doesn't
a lot of
specify.
the time people say, oh, but I heard from another agent that it has to be after your qualification and full-time. So is that rubbish? You're going to bust that myth for us?
Yes, I will bust that myth.
You hear that? Christina caught it. That is a myth. It does not need to be at a skilled level, and it does not need to be full-time. So let's have a look at that. You need to have just worked in your occupation. Doesn't need to be full-time?
No, it doesn't need to be full-time.
Wow. And if you're not in your occupation?
It can be in a related field.
A related field. Well, that's related or relevant field. That's very interesting. I guess that's open to interpretation, but let's not get into the specifics of that today. Let's talk about how can you prove that you're employed or you've worked in an occupation? What sort of evidence can people provide?
Generally, we request a few certain documents that we like to see. So first would be income statements from your employer.
An income statement is something that's generated by the
ATO,
Australian Taxation Office, and people can find that in their
MyGov account. Yeah.
Okay. So basically, a taxed job is what we're saying. If someone gets paid cash in hand, no pay slips or anything, that's not really going to count, is it?
No.
Is it illegal to get paid in cash though? Like, what if they do get a pay slip and they do get taxed, but their employer pays them in cash?
But that's not illegal. As long as they're paying their taxes, it's fine.
Okay, so that's good. Okay, so income statements is an evidence because that can verify employment. What else do they show?
We normally like to get a very detailed employment reference letter letter that outlines the dates they worked there, their occupation, their position, and the duties that they did while they were there.
Okay, so a reference letter, income statements, what else can one show that they were employed?
Superannuation statements.
That's a good one, yes.
Pay slips occasionally as well. Yeah, there's lots of different documents. Anything that will show that they've been working there.
So anything that's kind of third-party verifiable, you're saying?
Yeah,
also
yeah,
like
exactly.
bank statements.
Bank
perhaps,
statements,
things like that. Okay, so that's one component, is looking at that skill requirement. But what if someone doesn't have a qualification? Can they still apply for a 482 visa?
So it depends on the occupation. Certain occupations allow for work experience to be included in lieu of the qualification. So
How do you find that out?
you can find it out via the ANSCO code. So
Okay.
you can just search it up on the ABS website.
Okay, so those of you who don't know, every occupation that is nominated has an ANSCO code behind it, and you can search up the description of that, the skill level of that. It's public information. All right, so you also don't necessarily need to have a qualification to do a 482 visa, which is news to my ears and a lot of people, and good news, I hope. Tell me some more about the 482 visa. So you need to have relevant qualification, or you can get away with work experience. You've got to have 2 years of work experience. It doesn't necessarily have to be full-time or at a skilled level. What other requirements are there for a 482 visa? Is there English?
Yeah, so there's English requirements, which also differ between the two streams. So it's a little bit lesser for the short-term stream and a bit higher for the medium-term stream.
So if we're using, say, IELTS, for example, as a baseline, what are we looking at? Because I know a lot of people are worried about IELTS increasing from 6 to 6.5 for a graduate visa. What is it currently for a 482 visa?
So for short-term occupations, it's 4.5 in each band, 5 overall.
Okay.
And for the medium-term stream, it's 5 in each band, 5 overall.
Wow, so that's lower than what a graduate visa requires.
Yeah.
And I know there's talk about the 482 visas disappearing and everything, but my understanding is that's probably not going to be for another 12 months or so. And we don't know what the English requirement is going to be yet for these new visas coming into effect. So pretty safe for the next 12 months to be looking at this 482 visa. So English is good. It doesn't seem too difficult. So English, skills, work experience, what other criteria do people need to show for a 482 visa?
Just basic health and character requirements as well.
Explain a little bit about character, like what do they need, police checks or what?
Yeah,
or just a declaration?
So generally we provide a police check for any country that you've resided in for 12 months or more in the last 10 years. So that would be either an overseas police check, an Australian police check, just depending on their background.
Okay, and health check?
Yeah, health check, which will be done after the visa is lodged.
Okay, so the health check, are they scary? What needs to be done for health checks?
So it's a chest x-ray, a blood test as well. So it's quite straightforward. It's nothing to be concerned about.
So even if you're worried about needles, well, suck it up. You just got to get it done. Okay, processing times for 482 visas.
Relatively quick. Now that they've reintroduced the health check, it's been a bit slower, but still about a month or so to be approved.
Okay, and in terms of the length of the visa?
So the length of the visa is also dependent on the stream.
Yes.
So for short-term occupations, you can be nominated for up to 2 years, and medium-term occupations up to 4.
Okay, so that's good to note. Now, I find that there's a big difference between 482 visas and a lot of other visas.
Yes.
And what's that?
There's a lot of leniency for the 482. The requirements as well for the business is a little bit less strict as well. Yeah, it's just a good option for people that maybe they need time to work on their English skills, or they need time to work up extra experience. It's very
So what do you mean
lenient.
by that with leniency? Time to work on their English, time to work on their skills?
For people that have like only pre-qualification work experience, or are just finishing up on their student visa and maybe looking for another visa to give themselves extra time to work in Australia, it's a good option.
And a lot of the criteria is lenient because it's time of decision.
Yes.
So tell us about that. What does that mean?
So for example, the work experience requirement just means that you have to have gained 2 years of work experience at the time the department make a decision on the application. The same is also the case for English. So if you haven't had time to sit your English tests, but your deadline's coming up and you need to lodge your application.
Which would be why? Why would you need to lodge an application if you haven't got your English yet?
Perhaps your visa's about to expire.
And you need to get a bridging visa. So you get your application in, you get your bridging visa, you haven't got your English, you can still sit it after,
Yes,
which is not the case case with a lot of other visas.
Yes.
So don't get this confused with graduate visas and whatnot, but 482, that's the case. And you said until a decision is made, but you said the department is going to pretty much have a look at it in a month's time. So what happens if you don't meet the requirements by the time the department looks at it?
So if, for example, the department open your file and you haven't provided something that they think that is necessary to approve the visa, then they'll generally send out a request for further information and give you about 28 days to respond.
And if you don't respond during that time and your visa's refused and you appeal it to, say, the AAT, can you then meet requirements later on?
Yes, you can. So by the time the AAT come to make a decision and you have your IELTS, then
that becomes time of decision then. Wow.
Yes.
So listen, I think that's going to be very crucial because I know a lot of people are wanting to look at 482 visas because of these wonderful transitional arrangements that have come into effect, which can you touch on a little bit about what happened on the 25th of November?
The department have provided a pathway to permanent residency for all 482 visa holders.
Okay, which basically means if you're on a 482 visa with the same employer,
then you can transition to the 186 through the TRT pathway.
After how long?
After 2 years of working with your employer.
So I guess your tip of the day will be to jump on a 482 visa.
Absolutely,
if you can,
yes.
Because it seems to be a bit of a golden pathway to permanent residency at the moment.
Absolutely, yes.
Good. Well, thank you very much for your time, Christina. It is very much appreciated. I hope you guys got a lot of value out of that, and feel free to contact Christina if you have any questions about 482 visas and whatnot. Her details are here below right there. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
guys.